I turned 22 expecting cake and candles. Instead, I got cardboard boxes and a family meeting that would change everything. What started as my birthday dinner became the moment I realized I was never part of their future plans. But by sunset, that same day, I had made a decision that would teach them exactly what happens when you treat family like an afterthought. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Growing up in the Fletcher household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. Mom, Rebecca, ruled from her position as head nurse at Denver General. Dad, Thomas, commanded respect as a successful insurance broker. My older brother Kyle was the star quarterback who now worked as a personal trainer to celebrities. My younger sister Madison had just been accepted to Northwestern on a full academic scholarship. Then there was me, Jessica, the middle child who somehow managed to be both invisible and constantly criticized. While Kyle's football trophies lined the mantelpiece and Madison's honor roll certificates covered the refrigerator, my accomplishments seemed to evaporate the moment they happened. I'd graduated from Colorado State with a degree in graphic design, worked freelance for 3 years building a steady client base, and had recently landed a position at a boutique marketing firm in downtown Denver. But none of that ever seemed to register with them. Family dinners became sessions where everyone else's achievements were celebrated while my work was dismissed as playing on computers. When Kyle bought his first house, we had champagne toasts that lasted hours. When Madison got into Northwestern, they threw a neighborhood barbecue. When I signed my biggest client, a local restaurant chain that paid me more in 1 month than I'd ever made before, Mom simply asked if I was finally going to get a real job. The pattern had been established early. Kyle needed new cleats. Dad drove to 3 different stores to find the perfect pair. Madison wanted art supplies for a school project. Mom cleared her schedule for a shopping trip. When I asked for design software for my 18th birthday, I was told it was too expensive, and maybe I should consider a more practical hobby. Living arrangements followed the same logic. Kyle had moved out after college, naturally getting help with his security deposit and first month's rent. Madison had her pick of colleges, with parents eagerly discussing tuition payments and care packages. But when I mentioned wanting to find my own apartment after graduation, the response was lukewarm at best. "Why rush? You're saving money here," Dad would say, though I noticed they never hesitated to remind me about contributing to household expenses. The house itself reflected these dynamics. Kyle's old room remained a shrine to his athletic achievements, untouched and ready for whenever he wanted to visit. Madison's room was constantly updated with new furniture and decorations for her weekend visits from college. My room had the same furniture from high school, the same faded paint, the same sense of being temporary even though I'd lived there longest. Family vacations were another reminder of where I stood. 2 summers ago, they planned a week in Cabo. Everyone's schedules were carefully coordinated around Kyle's training sessions and Madison's summer programs. My work commitments with clients were brushed aside. "Jessica can work from anywhere," Mom declared, not bothering to ask if that was actually true for the projects I was handling. Even simple things like grocery shopping revealed the hierarchy. The fridge was always stocked with Kyle's protein, shakes and Madison's favorite organic snacks. My requests for specific foods were often forgotten or dismissed as unnecessary. "You eat what we eat," was Mom's standard response, even though what they ate rarely aligned with my schedule or dietary preferences. Friends started noticing too. My college roommate Emma would visit and comment on how differently I was treated during family interactions. "It's like they forget you live here," she once said after witnessing a dinner conversation where my parents spent an hour discussing Kyle's latest client while barely acknowledging my presence. I'd learned to laugh it off, but Emma's observation stung because it was accurate. The professional dismissal was perhaps the most painful. Despite building a client base that included several local businesses and earning enough to cover my expenses, my parents continued to treat my career like a phase. They'd ask when I was going to apply for corporate jobs, and seemed genuinely confused when I explained that I was running my own business. Success in their minds looked like Kyle's gym or Madison's academic achievements, not like the creative services I provided. February 15th, my 22nd birthday. I woke up that morning with cautious optimism, something I hadn't felt in years when it came to family celebrations. The night before, Mom had mentioned having something special planned, and Dad had actually written my birthday on the kitchen calendar in red ink. Even Madison had texted from Northwestern saying she was excited for our family dinner. I spent the morning working on a logo design for a new client, finishing early so I could help with whatever preparations were happening. The house felt different, charged with an energy that made me think maybe this year would be different. Maybe this would be the birthday where I finally felt like I belonged. By afternoon, I could hear movement throughout the house. Hushed conversations between my parents, the sound of papers rustling, Kyle's truck pulling into the driveway earlier than usual. Madison had driven down from Evanston, arriving with a stack of folders and her laptop bag. When I asked what was going on, Mom simply smiled and said, "You'll see at dinner." The dining room was set differently than usual. Instead of our typical casual place settings, Mom had used the good china, the crystal glasses we normally reserved for holidays. 7 chairs were arranged around the table, though I couldn't figure out who the 7th person might be. A bottle of champagne sat chilling in an ice bucket, and there was a manila envelope placed at Dad's usual spot at the head of the table. We gathered at 6 o'clock sharp. Kyle looked unusually serious, constantly checking his phone. Madison kept glancing at her parents with an expression I couldn't read. Mom and Dad exchanged meaningful looks across the table, the kind of silent communication that comes from 25 years of marriage. "Before we eat," Dad began, reaching for the manila envelope, "we have some incredible news to share. Life-changing news, really." He pulled out several documents, spreading them across the table like he was revealing winning lottery tickets. Mom's face was glowing with excitement. Thomas got the promotion. The promotion. Dad had been interviewing for a regional manager position with his insurance company for months. It was something he'd mentioned in passing, usually followed by comments about how competitive the process was and how unlikely it would be for someone from the Denver office to get selected. "They want me to head up the entire Southwest region," Dad continued, his voice thick with pride. "Based out of Phoenix. It's a 40% salary increase, company car, full relocation package." Kyle raised his champagne glass. "Dad, that's incredible." "Congratulations," Madison beamed. "I can transfer to Arizona State for my final 2 years. They have an amazing pre-med program, and the scholarship money will stretch further there." I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I pushed it down. This was good news. This was Dad achieving something he'd worked toward for years. I should be happy. "The best part," Mom continued, "is the timing. Thomas starts in 6 weeks, which gives us just enough time to sell the house, find a place in Scottsdale, and get everyone settled before Madison's spring semester." Get everyone settled. I waited for someone to elaborate on what that meant for me. I waited for Dad to explain how my work might transition or for Mom to ask about my clients. I waited for anyone to acknowledge that I existed in this equation. Instead, Kyle leaned forward with genuine interest. "What's the housing market like down there?" "I've been thinking about expanding my client base anyway. Phoenix has a huge fitness scene." "We've already been looking online," Madison added, pulling up something on her laptop. "There are some beautiful neighborhoods with great schools nearby for when I start graduate school." The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. Details about moving companies, shipping timelines, school transfers, job opportunities. Everyone had a place in this new life they were planning. Everyone except me. Finally, I found my voice. "What about my work? My clients are all here in Denver." The table went quiet for a moment. Mom reached over and patted my hand with the same condescending gesture she'd used when I was 7 and didn't understand why I couldn't have a pet hamster. "Sweetie, you're 22 now. This is probably the perfect time for you to figure out your own path. You can't live at home forever." Dad nodded as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. The house will sell quickly in this market. You'll have time to find an apartment here in Denver, or maybe this is your chance to try living somewhere new. You're young, you're single, you can go anywhere. Kyle actually smiled. It'll be good for you, Jess. Independence. Building your own life. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't them forgetting to include me in their plans. This was intentional. They had spent months planning a future that deliberately excluded me. While I had been living under their roof, contributing to household expenses, helping with groceries and utilities, they had been counting down the days until they could leave me behind. The seventh chair at the table wasn't for me. It was for the real estate agent who arrived 20 minutes later with listing papers already prepared. I excused myself from the table while the real estate agent, Carol, spread listing photos across the dining room like she was dealing cards. The sound of excited chatter followed me as I climbed the stairs to my room, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind my closed door, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands and trying to process what had just happened. I'm 22 years old. Single. Free to go anywhere. The words echoed in my head, but not in the empowering way Dad had intended. They felt like a dismissal, like I was being politely asked to remove myself from a story I'd never really been part of. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend from college, Ryan Torres, who now worked as a software developer in Boulder. Happy birthday. How's the family celebration going? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. They're moving to Phoenix. Without me. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, what do you mean without you? Before I could respond, my phone was ringing. Jessica, what the hell is going on? Ryan's voice was sharp with concern. I told him everything. The surprise announcement, the pre-planned real estate meeting, the casual assumption that I would just figure out my own housing situation while they started their new life in Arizona. Ryan listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. He was typically the type to offer solutions before you finished explaining problems. When I finished, there was a long pause. Jess, you realize how messed up this is, right? They're not obligated to take care of me forever, I said, repeating the rationalization I'd been building in my head. I'm an adult. Stop. Ryan's voice was firm. Just stop. This isn't about obligation. This is about basic human decency. You don't plan a family relocation for months and then surprise the person living in your house on their birthday that they need to find somewhere else to live. Something in his tone made me pause. Ryan had always been direct, but there was an anger in his voice I'd never heard before. When my family moved from California to Colorado when I was 19, he continued, you know what happened? They sat me down 3 months in advance. They helped me research apartments near campus. My dad co-signed my lease. My mom packed care packages for my first month of groceries, because that's what families do. I felt tears building behind my eyes. Maybe I'm overreacting. You're underreacting, Ryan said. You've been underreacting to their treatment for years. Remember sophomore year when you had to take out extra student loans because they decided Kyle's training camp was more important than your tuition? Remember when you got food poisoning and had to drive yourself to urgent care because your mom was at Madison's debate tournament? I did remember. I remembered a lot of things I'd learned to minimize, to excuse, to rationalize away. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Come stay with me, Ryan said suddenly. What? I'm serious. Pack a bag and come to Boulder tonight. My roommate just moved out and I've been looking for someone to split the rent anyway. You can keep your Denver clients, maybe pick up some Boulder businesses too. The market here is great for freelance design work. I looked around my room, at the furniture that had never been updated, at the walls that still had tape marks from high school posters. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. I can't just leave tonight. Why not? Ryan asked. What exactly are you staying for? To help them pack boxes for their new life without you? Through my bedroom door, I could hear Carol explaining market comparisons and pricing strategies. Kyle was asking about the timeline for closing. Madison was already planning which furniture she wanted for her dorm room next year. Ryan, I said quietly, am I crazy for feeling like they've been planning this for a while? You're not crazy. And honestly, I think you're probably right. This feels too organized, too smooth. Nobody makes a decision this big and executes it perfectly in one evening. As if to prove his point, I heard Mom mention something about having already contacted utility companies about service transfers. I found something out last month, Ryan continued, his voice gentler now. I didn't want to tell you because I wasn't sure, but after tonight. My cousin works for your dad's insurance company. The promotion interview started 8 months ago. 8 months. I'd been paying rent to people who had been planning to abandon me for 8 months. Pack a bag, Jess. Even if it's just for tonight. Even if you come back tomorrow. But don't stay there and listen to them plan a future that doesn't include you. Downstairs, someone laughed. Probably at something Carol said about the seller's market or quick turnaround. The sound felt foreign in a house that had never been filled with laughter on my behalf. I walked to my closet and pulled out my old college duffel bag. I slipped out the back door while they were still discussing staging strategies with Carol. Nobody noticed my absence, which felt fitting. Ryan's apartment in Boulder was a 40-minute drive that gave me time to think clearly for the first time in hours. When he opened the door, he took one look at my face and simply said, "Welcome home." That first night, we sat on his balcony overlooking the Flatirons, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. No walking on eggshells, no waiting. For criticism, no pretending my problems were smaller than everyone else's. Ryan listened as I talked through years of accumulated hurt, and for the first time, someone validated what I'd been feeling instead of telling me to be grateful for what I had. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Mom's voicemails progressed from concerned to annoyed to accusatory. Jessica, where are you? We need to discuss logistics. Then, this is incredibly selfish timing. Finally, your father is very disappointed in your behavior. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I spent the morning working on client projects in Ryan's sunlit living room, my laptop open next to a cup of coffee that nobody criticized me for buying. The contrast was stark. In Boulder, I was productive, focused, calm. At home, I'd spent most mornings bracing myself for whatever criticism would come my way. When I finally called Mom back, the conversation was predictably one-sided. Jessica Marie Fletcher, what is wrong with you? We have a house to sell, arrangements to make, and you disappear without a word? I needed space to process, I said. Process what? We gave you an incredibly generous notice. Most parents would have expected you to move out years ago. That's when something shifted inside me. The word generous hung in the air like a slap. Generous notice? I repeated. You announced on my birthday that you've been planning to leave me behind for 8 months. You had already contacted utility companies. You had already researched neighborhoods. You've been lying to me for almost a year. The silence on the other end was telling. We weren't lying, Mom said finally. We were waiting for the right time to discuss it. My birthday dinner wasn't a discussion. It was a corporate presentation. Over the following weeks, I established routines that felt revolutionary in their simplicity. Ryan and I split household responsibilities equally. When I cooked dinner, he cleaned up. When he bought groceries, I contributed half. We discussed major decisions together, like adults who respected each other's opinions. My work flourished in ways I hadn't expected. Without the constant undercurrent of criticism at home, I took on more ambitious projects. I pitched a complete rebrand to a Boulder coffee shop that had been using the same logo since the 1990s. I designed promotional materials for a local yoga studio's expansion. I even started a small side business creating digital marketing packages for mountain town businesses. The distance from Denver also gave me perspective on how abnormal my family dynamics had been. When I mentioned to a new client that my parents had moved to Phoenix, she asked how I was handling the transition. "It must be hard being so far from family," she said sympathetically. I realized that most people would assume a family move would include all family members, or at least involve serious discussion about alternatives. Meanwhile, back in Denver, the house sold in 6 days. Mom called to inform me that my belongings needed to be collected by the end of the month. "We're putting anything left behind in storage and you'll need to pay the monthly fees," she said, as if this was a reasonable solution. I drove down the next weekend with Ryan and his truck. Walking through the house felt surreal. Moving boxes were labeled with destinations: Phoenix, kitchen, Madison's dorm, Kyle's apartment. None were labeled with my name. In my old room, they'd already started packing my things, but carelessly. My portfolio from college was mixed in with old high school notebooks. My professional design equipment was tangled together in a cardboard box marked Jessica's stuff in Madison's handwriting. Ryan watched me sort through years of my life and said quietly, "They really were just waiting for an excuse to push you out, weren't they?" As we loaded the truck, I found something that stopped me cold. In the garage behind Dad's workbench was a folder labeled Phoenix Research. Inside were printed emails, apartment listings, school transfer documents, and job applications for Kyle, all dated from October, 6 months before Dad had even told us about the promotion interviews. That's when I realized this had never been about a surprise opportunity. This had been a calculated plan to start fresh without me. The folder changed everything. Sitting in Ryan's truck outside the house I'd called home for 22 years, I stared at documents that proved my family had been orchestrating my removal from their lives for months. But as I flipped through the papers, I found something that made my blood run cold. There, stapled to a Phoenix apartment application, was a financial disclosure form. Dad's income, Mom's income, Kyle's projected earnings, Madison's scholarship details. And at the bottom, in a section labeled Additional Household Income, was a line item that read, "Jessica Fletcher, monthly contribution, $800. They had been using my rent money in their financial planning for the Phoenix move. My contributions to utilities, groceries, and household expenses were listed as miscellaneous income, totaling nearly $1,200 per month. For someone they claimed was ready for independence, I had apparently been a significant line item in their budget. But the real shock came in the next document. A printout of an email exchange between Dad and a Phoenix realtor, dated 3 months ago. The additional income from our current living situation should continue through closing, giving us extra padding for the down payment, Dad had written. Our youngest will be transitioning to independent living around the same time, so the monthly budget will actually improve with the move. They hadn't just planned to leave me behind. They had calculated exactly how long they could extract money from me to fund their escape. I drove back to Boulder in a rage I'd never experienced before. Ryan took one look at the documents and said, something I'd never heard him say, "Jessica, you need to call a lawyer." "For what?" "It's not illegal to move away from your adult child." "It might be illegal to misrepresent your financial situation on mortgage applications, though. And depending on how they've been handling your rent payments." That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Kyle directly. Not to complain, not to seek sympathy, but to ask specific questions. "Hey, Jess, what's up?" His voice was casual, distracted. I found Dad's Phoenix planning folder in the garage. The one with all the financial documents. Silence. "Kyle, did you know they've been budgeting my rent money toward their new house down payment?" More silence then. "Look, Jess, that's between you and them. Did you know about the planning? The months of preparation?" His sigh was audible. "Of course I knew. We all knew. Madison and I have been helping them research neighborhoods since Christmas. Since Christmas. My own siblings had been part of the conspiracy. Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you would have made it complicated," Kyle said, and his honesty was brutal. "You would have had questions and feelings and... Look, this was the cleanest way to handle it." "The cleanest way to handle what exactly?" "Your transition to independence. Mom and Dad have done enough. They supported you through college, let you live at home while you figured out your career. At some point, you need to stand on your own. Something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about my readiness for independence. This was about their readiness to be done with me. After I hung up, Ryan and I sat in his kitchen, the financial documents spread across the table like evidence in a criminal case. "You know what's really messed up?" Ryan said. "They could have just asked you to start looking for your own place, given you a timeline, helped you transition. Instead, they made this elaborate plan to trick you into thinking it was spontaneous." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the car. Dad's 2019 Honda CR-V, the one he was so proud of, the one that was supposed to make the drive to Phoenix. The one that was still registered in both his and my name from when I'd helped secure the financing 2 years ago. I had completely forgotten about that detail until now. When Dad's credit had taken a hit from a business loan application, I needed a co-signer for the car loan. I'd been happy to help, thinking it was what families did for each other. The monthly payments came directly from Dad's account, but legally I was half owner of that vehicle. The next morning, I drove to the DMV with the registration paperwork. The clerk confirmed what I'd suspected. As a co-owner, I had full legal rights to the vehicle, including the right to sell it. I called the Honda dealership where they'd originally purchased the car. "I need to get a trade-in estimate," I told the salesman. "Excellent condition 2019 CR-V with low mileage. In this market, you're looking at about $24,000. $24,000. Almost exactly what I'd paid in rent and household contributions over the past 2 years. I thought about calling Dad first, giving him a chance to explain, maybe even apologize. Then I remembered Kyle's words. The cleanest way to handle it. They were right. Sometimes the cleanest way is the most direct way. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. The phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. Dad's voice on the voicemail was a mixture of disbelief and fury I'd never heard before. "Jessica, what the hell have you done? The car is gone. The dealership says you sold it yesterday. Call me back immediately." I didn't call back immediately. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started my workday like any other. The $24,000 check was safely deposited in my account, and for the first time in my adult life, I had genuine financial security. But more than that, I had something I'd never experienced before. The knowledge that I could take action instead of just accepting whatever was done to me. When I finally returned Dad's call 3 hours later, he launched into a tirade about theft, betrayal, and legal consequences. I let him finish, then calmly explained that as a co-owner of the vehicle, I had every legal right to sell it. "You helped with the financing, not ownership," he sputtered. "Actually, Dad, you might want to check the paperwork. My name is on the title as co-owner, not co-signer. When your credit score couldn't handle the loan alone, the dealer suggested adding me as an owner to qualify for better rates. Remember?" The silence that followed was profound. "I want that money back," he said finally. "I'm sure you do. Just like I wanted honest communication about your Phoenix plans instead of finding out on my birthday that you'd been planning to abandon me for 8 months. We weren't abandoning you. We were launching you into independence. By lying to me for months while taking my rent money to fund your new life." Another silence. Then Mom's voice in the background. "Tell her we'll sue." "For what?" I asked. "For selling my own car? For keeping money from a legal transaction? Go ahead. I have documentation of every rent payment I made, every utility contribution, every grocery bill I split. I also have your Phoenix financial disclosures where you listed my contributions as household income while planning to eliminate them. I think a judge would find that interesting." The threat stopped immediately. That evening, Kyle sent a text. "You've lost your mind. That car was for the Phoenix move." I responded, "They have plenty of money for a car. They saved $100 a month. For 8 months by lying to me about their plans. That's almost $10,000 right there. Madison called an hour later crying, "Jess, how could you do this to the family?" "Madison, I need you to understand something. A family doesn't secretly plan to exclude one of its members. What they did to me isn't normal. What I did to them was legal." The crying stopped. After a long pause, she said, "I didn't think about it that way." Over the following months, something remarkable happened. My design business exploded. Without the emotional drain of managing family dysfunction, I had energy to pursue bigger clients. I redesigned the marketing materials for 3 Boulder businesses, created a complete brand identity for a Denver startup, and started developing an online course for small business owners who needed design help but couldn't afford agencies. Ryan and I became genuine partners in our shared space. We supported each other's goals, celebrated each other's successes, and created the kind of mutual respect I'd never experienced in a living situation. When he got promoted at his software company, I cooked his favorite dinner. When I landed my biggest client yet, he bought champagne and insisted we toast properly. 6 months after the car incident, I received an unexpected text from Madison. "I'm visiting Boulder next weekend. Can we talk?" She arrived looking different, somehow more mature. Over coffee, she said something that surprised me. "I've been thinking about what you said, about families not excluding members. I realized I never questioned it because it wasn't happening to me." We talked for 3 hours. She told me about conversations she'd overheard between our parents, comments about how I never seemed to fit, and how the Phoenix move was a chance for everyone to find their place. She apologized for being part of the planning and admitted she'd felt uncomfortable with the secrecy, but hadn't known how to address it. "I want to do better," she said. "I want us to have a real relationship, separate from them." Today, 2 years later, I run a successful design consultancy from my own studio space in downtown Boulder. Madison and I talk weekly and visit each other regularly. She's applying to graduate schools in Colorado, partly because she wants to stay closer to the family relationship she never knew she was missing. Kyle still thinks I overreacted, and my parents have never apologized. They did eventually buy a new car in Phoenix, and according to Madison, they still occasionally mention how dramatic I was about the whole situation. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept being treated as disposable. Sometimes standing up for yourself looks like conflict, legal action, or decisions that others will call extreme. If your family treats you like an afterthought, you don't have to keep accepting that role. You can write yourself into a better story, even if it means leaving some characters behind. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.